Welcome to The Next Next. I'm the host, Jason Jacobs. This show sorts through the nuances of athlete development through the lenses of a dad who's sorting through those nuances with my own kids, but also as an entrepreneur who's in the early stages of building my next company in the space. Today's guest is Freddy Meyer. Freddy's an interesting one. He played 4 years of college hockey at BU, where he was an All-American and was Athlete of the Year his senior year. He played almost 300 games in the NHL. He played in Sweden's top league for Modo Hockey. And then as a coach, he was an AHL assistant, and he was a head coach and GM in the EHL. And since 2020, he's been the head coach at the Rivers School here in the Boston area. Freddy also founded a training academy called Dream Big HockeyStars. And in addition to that, he's a hockey dad. He's got two boys, Carter and Freddy, and he coached them both on the Junior Eagles through their entire journey, and then again at Rivers. And Freddy actually just committed yesterday, at time of this recording, to BU, and Carter is leaving after his freshman year to go to the NTDP, and he's slated to be a top 10 pick in the NHL draft when that comes. So we have a great discussion in this episode about Freddy's journey in the game as a player and then as a coach. We talk about his development path and then how that's informed the development path for his boys, for the kids that he's coached in club and in prep, and how the landscape is changing in general. What's good about it, what's bad about it, what gets Freddy excited about the future, and his philosophies on player development generally. Okay, Freddy Meyer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited for you to come on. A little nervous because I feel like you're the trifecta. You played in the NHL, you are coaching in prep and on a team that coming off a really good year, and you've been actually, maybe it's more than a trifecta because you're also a club coach from the little guys and you're a crazy hockey dad, right? And so, yeah, I guess that's a quadfecta, but there's a lot to learn from someone in the spot that you're in with the experience that you have, and I'm just so grateful for you to take the time to come on the show and share your experience.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, and obviously, I'd say, the youth hockey world's the wild, wild west a little bit, and I feel like it changes every month or two. It's very fluid and moving, and excited to be here and chat some hockey.
Well, before we jump into the here and now, and there's a lot to talk about in the here and now, but before we jump into that, how'd you first get into the sport?
Good question. I grew up in a small town in Hampshire in the middle of nowhere, is like what I like to say. It's about 45 minutes north of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, up 95 that turns into Route 16. And we moved to a town called Rochester. And my brother decided to give it a try just to learn to play in Rochester youth hockey. And the first year I was 2 years younger than him, so I wasn't quite ready for it, or mentally I didn't think I was ready for it. And I guess being a rink rat for his 8-month experience playing hockey, I decided to get into it the following year. And I don't want to say never look back, but essentially never look back from 6-year-old me and being around the rink, and just developed a love and a passion for the game.
Did your parents play the sport, or was athletics a big part of their lives growing up?
Not really. My dad played a little soccer in high school, but no, none of them, they both can't skate. I don't know if they've ever been on ice, to be honest with you. I don't know if they've ever actually put ice skates on. I think it literally was, we moved to this new town. My dad would read the paper every morning, and he saw hockey tryouts, and from there it developed into me going to the rink and them spending a good part of their lives trucking through New England and across the country at different rinks, and helped us, my brother and I, develop a passion for the game.
And obviously you ended up playing in the NHL. You played several hundred games, and you would have played a lot longer, it sounds like, if it didn't get cut short from concussions. At what point in the journey so two different questions. One, at what point in the journey did you feel like you had a shot? And then two, at what point in the journey did you want to have a shot?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, for high school, I played at the U.S. National Program the first couple of years of the program in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and then I was lucky enough to play at Boston University. And during that time, obviously, it was my draft year as well, when I was through my 18 year, and I wasn't drafted. Being a 5'9" defenseman at that time, they were looking for more Darian Hatchers and 6'5" guys in the back end to clutch and grab and whack it and whatever else. So I didn't get drafted, and I never, to be honest with you, obviously the goal as a little guy is always to play in the NHL, but I don't know if I ever really thought that was real, even going from the national program to BU and playing, having a pretty good college career as well. And I guess you never know what's there until you get there. And I feel like that was even for me, like it took like my first NHL training camp after I graduated of seeing what that level was and what it felt like. And then I guess through that experience in early September, you're like, okay, like this is okay. Like I belong here. Like I can survive out here. And obviously my first year I spent most of the year in the American League, got a few cold cup of coffees with the Flyers for warm-ups and some practices and stuff. But overall, like that was probably the first time was once I got to pro hockey and realized like, all right, like this goal of playing the NHL might be attainable at that point.
But even to play in the NTDP and then to play at BU, both of those in themselves are significant milestones that most hockey players never get access to. So when you were coming up, when you were a little guy, did you know from the time you were little you were different? Did most of the people who were the stars when you were a little guy, were those the ones that were the stars later on in their hockey journeys? What was your experience like coming up in the younger ages?
Yeah, I think I was relatively a strong player as a younger guy going through it. I played some years in New Hampshire. Then my last year of quote unquote youth hockey, my parents would drive down to Massachusetts. So there was a gentleman that Fran Murphy, who's a local legend in my eyes they used to be called the Metro League before it was now the EHF. And Fran Murphy called my dad out of the blue one day up in New Hampshire and said that he's building this team and looking for some players and if I would be open to coming down and trying out. So at that point, it was called the North Shore Raiders, which was one birth year up. So I guess I was playing a year up as a 1981 birth year. And so played on a pretty good team that year. And fortunately or unfortunately, we were coming to Massachusetts probably 4 to 6 days a week at an hour and a half at a time. So at some point, my parents are getting burnt out from being a crazy hockey parent. And the following year, I ended up at Cardigan Mountain School, which is in Enfield, New Hampshire, up by Dartmouth College.
Did you board there?
I did board there, yeah. That was about an hour and a half from home, too. So I went to Cardigan. My brother actually went to Cardigan, too, a few years before me. And there's a New Hampshire local legend, Darren Quint, who played in the NHL as well. But he went to Cardigan, was probably the first kid that we knew about going to Cardigan. And then at the time, there was the gentleman, Andy Noel, who was coaching there. And unfortunately, he's passed away since through some cancer. Andy did a great job of building teams and finding players. And we had some good teams up there when I was at Cardigan. I was there 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So playing there, playing what they would call as varsity hockey against a lot of like local prep school teams. And from there, I got an opportunity through the U.S. national program to be a slight guinea pig the first year of going out to Michigan as they were trying to get this program off the ground. And so it was a wild run. And obviously, like I said, my parents had no real hockey experience. And I guess my dad put a lot of trust in people that he could trust that were on the ground and trying to make the best decision for my track moving up through the ladder.
So when they were making all that sacrifice, how did they look at it? Like, was there goal in mind? What was there a method to the madness? Were they just going with the wind, right? Because I've heard you say in the past that on other interviews that you've done that the primary role of the parent should be number one cheerleader, and that when there's parents glaring in the stands, like expecting more out of their kids and stuff, that it can be toxic and unhealthy and not the best way to even achieve what they want, which is to get the best out of their kids. So when they were making all that sacrifice, like how did they think about it? How did they justify it?
I honestly think they were just parents that were willing to lean into whatever they had to for whatever their kids' activities wanted to be. I don't think they ever, in their wildest dream, think that I would even play college hockey, to be honest with you. Neither of them went to college. Where I grew up, most people at that time weren't going to college. It wasn't like, hey, we got to leverage this kid's abilities to get him to play Division I college or a scholarship or anything. It was literally, obviously I enjoyed it, and they were willingness to lean into it and put their heart and soul into it. And in a way, my dad owns a masonry construction company. So there's been some good years in construction, some bad years in construction, and we moved around some houses in terms of what I might have had to sell one to move to a different one. And they just were willing to do wherever they could to help their kids. And I don't think there was never a time going through it that we got to do this to get them there. I think it was more they enjoyed the experience, being parents, watching their kid have fun. And I've said it before and on different episodes of shows I've been on, like I said, my dad barely graduated high school, and he was somewhat of a sports psychologist back in his day, I think, where he, every time I came out of the rink, I had a great game. And obviously I was a pretty good player, so he probably ran the percentages on terms of success I was might have having. But at the end of the day, he was never hammered on me because of whatever. I wasn't working hard enough, or I wasn't trying, or I didn't score enough, or I don't know. I took a lot of penalties in my day, through youth hockey and college and pro, and it was never, it was always very positive, and there was always a light in his eyes that was shining. And I really do believe like it helped fuel the passion for the game, and I've tried to carry it on with my kids.
So I've heard Wayne Gretzky talk before about how when people ask him, like, how hard did you work growing up or whatever, he said, like, it wasn't work to me. Like, I did a lot, but I didn't do it as work. I did it just because I love the game. But then you hear these kind of counterexamples of parents that almost like mold their kids to be pros from the time that they're not even walking yet. And then they're like surrounded by handlers all the way through the journey. And I know that's more prevalent today than it was when you were coming up in the game. But what was your mindset? Like, were you hammering yourself? Were there a lot of handlers around? Were you seeking out ways to get better? Were you grinding? Was it pressure? Was it fun? Like, what? Take us into your headspace as you were coming up in the game.
Honestly, no, there was no handlers. There was no secret sauce, secret skills coaches. It was more about just, I think, the love of the game. And when the season ended and all the rinks took the ice out in the middle of New Hampshire, it was street hockey and rollerblade and being outside or playing baseball or other sports. So I think it was a very organic, free play type of atmosphere. It was, like I said, it wasn't structured. It wasn't. My parents had no playbook, right? They barely knew what the game was. They learned the rules as we were getting older, as my brother and I were getting older into the game. But my dad probably would still ask me questions on what some of the rules are, right? Like, it wasn't like he studied the game or had this deep understanding of it. It was more of just like, hey, you love it, go play, go have fun, great job, post game, let's get ready for tomorrow, whatever else it was. So I do think there's an important element of building a love for the game and not pushing it down maybe a child's throat in terms of like, you have to like this. I think if you want someone to really work hard when no one's watching, there needs to be a love for that versus it being so calculated.
And today you hear a lot about how kids should be shooting pucks, kids should be running up hills with parachutes on, kids should be hitting the gym, kids should be dialing in their food, kids should be, and it's all about like, if you want to make it, if you want to get to this level, which then feeds that level, which then feeds the one after that. And then you also hear a lot of what you're saying, right, about how like it should start with love and it should be about love. I guess, how do you sort through that in terms of all the hard work that it does take to make it versus like keeping it fun? And I guess we're still on you, so I don't know if I want to switch gears to the whole dad and coach part quite yet, but it's hard to separate the two given that you came up in the game. And yeah, like looking back now, how do you think about that balance?
I think there needs to be a balance. Like, I think I look at I guess life habits, right? Like, all right, food as an example, it shouldn't be like, hey, you have to eat X, Y, and Z. It should be like, hey, we're doing this to make you a healthy human. I mean, I think that looking back at my parents, not having any experience with nutrition or sports psychology or sports or anything, it was like, we're going to have a balanced dinner. Like here, you got meats, we got potatoes, we got fruits and vegetables. You're going to wake up and you're going to have a balanced breakfast, right? I think it was more about like the balance, and probably I do reflect back on them because they were so naive to the process. And obviously I'm on the flip side now, right? I'm a dad. I've been through it all. I have a better understanding of what it might take, but I still feel like we're doing this because this is what's best for you as a human, not like we need you to be a NHL superstar. And I think they do tie together when done correctly. And working out, like, hey, like you need to go work out. Like it should be fun to get stronger and you look better with your shirt off or whatever it might be. It's not just about like, hey, like you need to go do plyometrics or you skate faster. Like I think when there's a connection of like, we're going to try and make you a better human. And that might be when you're 20, 30, 40, or 50, you've built some of these life lessons along the way that's going to make you healthier and happier and hopefully more successful in whatever you might do in life.
Okay. And we're definitely going to dig a lot more into the whole like state of the game now versus then and your thoughts on player development. I know it's a passion area for you, but sticking with the Freddy story. So you played in the pros. Talk a bit about the transition. I know it sounds from other interviews like it happened a bit as a surprise before you were maybe mentally prepared for it. So how did it come about? Where did that leave you how did you transition into development? And then how did that coincide just from a timeline standpoint with when kids started coming into the picture? Because I think that matters when we get to the coaching and dadding part of the discussion.
Yeah, so I graduated BU in 2003 and then signed with the Philadelphia Flyers. And then, like I said, the first year, 03, 04, was I spent 98% of the year in the minors. I got one NHL game midway through the second half of the season. Philly had I think they had a few fights or something the night before, and they were short a few players, so a few of us got called up. And then my second year, 04, 05, was the first lockout that kind of during my time span of 04, 05. And the American League at that time, for anyone that's a hockey junkie, you should go back and look at some of those rosters from 04, 05. And Providence Bruin had Patrice Bergeron, and Jason Spezza was playing for the Binghamton Senators in New York, and Eric Stahl was in Lowell for Carolina. The American League was very, very strong, and we had a pretty strong team in Philly with a couple Flyers that got dropped down, plus some of the older veterans we had and some younger guys like myself and a few others. And so we ended up winning the Calder Cup that year, and the American League beat Chicago to win it. The Chicago Wolves always had a super strong, still have a really strong program there. And that kind of led into, I think, improving myself at that with a fun experience playing in the American League. But in a way, it was like a young NHL, and you're like, hey, I can have success. I'm holding my own against Patrice Bergeron. I'm all right. I can do this. And then coming into training camp that following year in 05, I actually broke my leg in an exhibition game, and which set me back 6 or 7 weeks, and finally got healthy and spent another couple of weeks in the American League, and then finally got called up and essentially played, the rest of my career in the NHL at some location, but played in Philly there for another about year and a half, and then got traded to Long Island for a couple of years. I did get dropped on waivers, the old behind the scenes of the NHL. When you're a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth defenseman, it's not as sexy as Ovechkin taking one-timers and sit in his office. So bounced around a little bit on waivers with Phoenix and San Antonio, then back in Long Island, and finished my last year in the NHL, I think was 10-11 when Atlanta was still, when the Winnipeg Jackets were in Atlanta. So unfortunately got hurt in Atlanta. Concussion set me off in February for the rest of the season. And then my last year pro was that got healthy that summer, and then we ended up over and playing for Modo Hockey in the Swedish Elite League in northern Sweden for my last year, I think, which was 2012. During that journey, obviously, I got married in 06, and I have a son that was born in 07. My son Freddy was born in 07, and then my son Carter was born in 2009. So Lindsay and I and my wife, obviously we had kids pretty quickly in the process. So as you're bouncing around, you're in Atlanta and you're unsure what your status is going to be from day to day. And obviously there's a lot of anxiety that goes into it. It's incredible honor and an achievement to play in the NHL. But obviously, like I said, when you have a bubble guy and you're holding on by a thread, you feel like every day you're always making sure you don't look the GM in the eye too closely so he doesn't want to pull you aside and send you down in a lot of ways. But, for my boys, obviously they were around it when they were young. And then for them, that kind of like my dad had kicked in when we were over in Sweden. They were at 3 and 4 now or so. And obviously where we were located in Sweden was essentially at the North Pole. So that in December, it got dark got light at like 10 a.m. and got dark at 2 p.m. So from 2 to 7, you got these two rugrats that are buzzing around the apartment, and we would put the snowsuits on and the old Jofa bubbles, and you'd go down to a local park, and the town workers and managed the park. The baseball fields in the summertime became hockey rinks in the wintertime, and they just started skating the same way. It was like Jofa bubbles, snowsuits, hockey sticks, and a puck, and crashing into snowbanks and buzzing into each other. And the same way, it organically developed a love for the game, and it's been fun to watch their journey from, like I said, from the snowbanks of Sweden to, I guess, the streets of Boston.
And so how and when did you ultimately leave the game? And then what did that transition process look like? And how did you, and I guess the third question, and gosh, 3 is a lot of questions to fit in one question, but then how did you end up in player development?
Good question. So yeah, my last year pro was in Sweden. I also got hurt around Christmas time and had a flare up of concussion. So unfortunately, I think I was 30 or 31 at that point, and still in a lot of guys' prime of their career. But I made the hard decision of walking away from the game at that point. I always had a lot of anxiety with the concussions of what the next one might be like. Knock on wood, I got I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot here after 10, 13 years of not playing, but obviously it was a tough decision at the time. And but for me, maybe it probably since I had young kids, I wanted to be in the best shape I could for them, and always was concerned about what the next concussion looked like. So we moved back from Sweden to Greater Boston, and at that time I didn't know what I was going to do. I was kicking around some other interviews and trying to figure out life a little bit, and I always say my wife was the one that was constantly pushing me to be like, why are you looking outside of hockey? Like, you've played at a high level. This is what you've always known. Like, so with that, I reached out to some GMs that I had contact with over my time of playing, and I was lucky enough to get an interview with the LA Kings, and they had an assistant coach position available in Manchester, New Hampshire. So my first 2 years of not playing pro hockey and retiring, I was able to work for the Kings up in Manchester for 2 years as an assistant coach. And once again, we had a lot of really good young players at the time before they won some Stanley Cups for the Kings. So it was a great place to learn and develop. And same way, now you're on the other side of the ice, or on the other side of playing. You're now coaching and trying to help young guys, take the same path you took, which was awesome. It was fun to work with pros and, guys that are passionate about it and really wanted to know the finer details of the game. And that was an enjoyable couple of years. And I guess for me, because I bounced around a little bit as a player, we were trying to just get our feet settled in Boston. So we knew we wanted to stay local. And a lot of those American League teams are starting to move west to be closer to their parent clubs. And, although coaching in the American League or in the NHL was an incredible accomplishment and incredible job, you're also away from your family a lot. And I always reflected back on of my parents, and I don't think they missed, 5 games my entire career. And so for me, I was having some anxiety of what my next path would be. And I knew if I was coaching pro hockey, there's a lot of conflict. You're away from your family a lot. So I decided to pivot and got into doing some junior coaching locally in Bedford, Mass. And at the same time, I started my own development company, Dream Big HockeyStars, where we started doing private lessons and small little clinics. And I'm obviously once again, I think a biggest part for me when I started that was about like kids having fun. Like if you're coming to the rink, like the coach should be high energy and the drill should be fun and the compete level should be high. Just fostering an element of like, yeah, it's going to be hard, it's going to be serious, but it's going to be fun. And so anyways, it's taken off a life of its own from there. And, that was then back in 2012, 13, 14, when I was doing the Manchester thing and getting things off the ground. And obviously having young kids that I knew needed skill development in a way and wanted to be on the ice in the spring or a couple times in the summer, I started building some programs around them, and then I developed it from there.
I've heard you say before that you consider yourself more of a player development person than a coach. What is the difference in your mind between a player development person and a coach, and how much overlap is there between the great coaches and the great player development people?
Yeah, I think they tie together closely. Sometimes I feel like, in a way, if you're just coaching, you're running systems, you're putting in face-off plays, and I guess I look at like as a local New England guy, like a Bill Belichick approach, where it's very like, and I don't know Bill or what his background is in terms of developing players during practice and stuff, but from afar, watching on TV, like he's managing the entire game, he's orchestrating this thing. It's pretty to watch, and it's very calculated. And so there's definitely an element of that when you're coaching. And then I do think for me, it's in a big piece of what I feel like I try to do as I've been a coach is also the development piece, right? Where, yeah, maybe you're teaching D on how to use the net or why to use the net, or how do you protect the puck and why, and where is the little quiet space in the offensive zone, or trying to have kids at any level, if it's tier 3 juniors or it's prep school, or it's like I said, it's kids, local kids. It's trying to teach the game at a higher level. And in that, even when I'm, like I said, when I'm coaching at a prep school or I'm coaching juniors, like the fun part for me was making us a better team. And a lot of it goes through like development and teaching the game at a higher level, not just putting in a really fancy system and trying to like play X's and O's the entire time, but like teaching guys how to see ice, teaching guys how to make the right play and not just make the easy play in a lot of sense. And I think with that, you do need to have a longer leash because guys are going to make mistakes. And they need to know if they're going to make mistakes, they're going to go back out probably next shift. Now, if they make the same mistake over and over again, maybe we need to have a further conversation. But overall, like, hey, I want you to make that play. That was the right play. You just didn't execute it. Do it again next time and execute it. And so I do try to find that balance of, yeah, you're coaching, you are putting in face-off plays, and you have a neutral and forecheck, and you have that stuff. It's the same way. It's taking that next step from a development approach of, hey, if I'm coaching, in my eyes, outside of the NHL, like all those guys are trying to develop to get to that spot. Let's not lose sight of that. As a local 2015 youth coach, like I shouldn't be coaching, I should be developing because my job is to get him ready for the next level, and then it moves on. And if you're the head coach of a Division I hockey program, like your job is to develop, to move those kids on to the next level and not losing sight of that. I think sometimes at certain levels and certain coaches, it's all about winning. And a lot of times, if winning is always the end goal, then you can lose sight of that development piece. And I've tried to hopefully players I've had would back me up that say, with development, you can win. Just looking at it a little bit structurally different versus like coaching to win. Let's develop, coach to win. Is my approach, and I try to take that mindset when I walk in the rink each day.
I definitely want to keep focusing on this player development thread, but one question I forgot to ask before we transitioned was you said something really interesting, which was that the coaching path in the AHL was fertile ground, but it didn't fit with your priorities from a family standpoint. That resonates with me because I'm dealing with that right now. I'm 49. I have a lot of good professional years in front of me. I'm super ambitious by nature. I've had some success, but success is relative, and I could have a lot more success. And like the table set for me to go and take a big swing entrepreneurially, but I'm prioritizing family first, and then I'll build the kind of company I can build within the constraints of not messing with how present I want to be with my kids, right? Was that a difficult decision? And what advice do you have for people trying to navigate that tension? Because from my seat, it seems like inevitably the grass is going to look greener. Whichever path you choose, you're going to look at the other one longingly.
Good. Yeah, I think once again, I was reflecting back on my childhood and how much time and how my parents, I guess parent, if that's the right word, where they didn't miss a baseball game or a soccer game or a hockey game or practice, or very collaborative with both of them always being present. And I just feel like there was a lot of power for that. And obviously I feel like for me, I got the young boys and I don't want to miss much. Is there a way for me to control my own destiny, sleep in my own bed every night and be around them and be super present? And luckily I was able to find a job that worked and that we made work. And obviously, I guess proud to say, like my younger guy, Carter, will play at the national program here in September. And he hasn't had many coaches in his life. And not that I'm scared to let him go or let him learn from somebody else, because I think that's super powerful too, to have different messaging and different teachings and coaching. And hopefully it just keeps adding layers to his game. But, I've been fortunate enough to be on the ice with him since he was, like I said, jumping into snowbanks in Sweden with his skates on. And even my older guy, Freddy, like I'd been on the ice almost their entire careers. And obviously I was fortunate enough to get a job at the River School and be able to work there and coach them there too. The timing worked out. And so I've been around them a lot. Hopefully they appreciate it. There are moments where I feel like, hopefully they have a coming to Jesus moment when they're in their 30s and 40s, be like, wow, like you did a lot for us. And not that I want to pat on the back, but just more about trying to do the best I could as a father and for us as parents. And hopefully when they're my age and they look back, like they choose a path too, they have kids, to be around their kid and really lean in to develop good humans, right? Like it wasn't about me trying to make them NHLers or make them get to the national program or any of that. It was literally just about like, hey, like there's some really good values that you can find in sport. And when you have parents present, I think it's super powerful.
So maybe talk a bit about the progression in terms of just timelines. So as Dream Big was coming up, and then the 09 Eagles, and did you also coach the 07 Eagles too?
Yeah, I haven't been the head coach of that team, but I've always been part of that equation.
Okay, so you had the kid coaching, you had the Dream Big stuff, and then you had Rivers. What did those timelines look like? And then, like, where did the kids' game fit into all of that? So were the initial Dream Big programs built around your kids and their friends, for example, or just how did those dots intersect over the years?
It's initially with Dream Big, just organically grew. I think obviously when you have kids that are coming up that are different ages, and obviously they have teammates that they play with, and I think obviously when you're coaching teams, like obviously you're around a lot of families, and so I Dream Big in terms of when we were setting up programming. Initially, you started with a couple of age groups that kind of centered around your kids, and that grew to older age groups, and I've always done a lot of private lessons, which has always been enjoyable on my end because you can really slow the whole world down and really focus on that individual and what they actually really need to work on, especially when they're a really good age and they want to learn and want to focus and build up their real fundamentals that will stick with them throughout their entire lives, even if they're playing beer league when they're 45 and they learned how to get on their outside edge when they're 6. Like, they don't lose that. It's similar to riding a bicycle in my eyes. So yeah, grew Dream Big through that. Obviously, during the fall and winter time, things slow down a little bit just because I was coaching 2 youth teams or club teams. And then when the boys were old enough and I got the job at Rivers, their season pivot into just being fall hockey. So they play in the club teams in the fall, and then we'll call it November 1st. It's a week or 2 later. Those seasons kind of end, and then the prep school season kind of kicks off through the winter months. So obviously, there's been some weeks when I'm on the ice a lot. When the kids are in their prime, you're coaching a couple teams, a couple nights a week, plus games on the weekends, plus privates, plus coaching the junior team where we'd practice in the morning and the afternoons are free and you're on the ice, and then you're racing to Newton to get the daily to jump on Eagles ice for the next couple hours. So, but same way, even for me as a coach, and I'm on the ice a lot. There's not too many bad days that you're at the rink and that you're on the ice. And I think when you have that mindset and you enjoy it and you want to have fun, and it's easy to put your skates back on and get back out there.
There's a lot of talk here in New England about the New England model versus the Minnesota model, and how the Minnesota model looks more like, at least from my seat, similar to how the model was in New England when I was coming up in the game, where it's like you played for your town and it was all nonprofit and the same core kids tend to stick together year over year. And then with club now, it's more privatized. The teams are more transient. There's maybe less development happening at the team level, and then more is left to the kids and families to do on their own. There's not a core group of kids that sticks together and builds chemistry year over year. From the cheap seats here, it seems like you did things pretty different with your Eagles team in terms of that core group sticking together from little guys all the way through. But how do you think about the state of hockey generally and here in New England? And then what elements of it, I guess, how is that the same or different than the approach you've tried to take in your own little bubble with your kids and with the teams that you've coached?
Yeah, it's a big conversation about Minnesota versus Michigan or Minnesota versus Massachusetts and who's developing the best players. And I feel like it's been going on. I feel like it's been going on probably since I was going through it. Obviously now with social media and everyone's got their phones at their fingertips and Twitter and all this other stuff. So you can constantly see statistics and data and all the points. And
I've heard your toe drag rants. We don't have to cover them.
Yeah. I guess for me, I don't think Massachusetts is in this terrible spot that sometimes is out there, to be honest with you. Like, I think we have some really good players here. I think you could dive through the most recent national team 40 camp, or if we want to look at U15 Select Festival and we want to look through some of these All-Star games, I think you're trying to find like Minnesota and it's not like Minnesota players are so much better than Massachusetts players that we're not even we shouldn't be in the same rank, right? And I feel like sometimes that conversation seems to be that great, and I think it's more like, do I want A or B? They're very similar. Like, what do I want? What do I want? And I do get a little disappointed that there aren't more Massachusetts kids, and I don't have an answer on why. It's actually something that I've thought a lot about going through this summer and seeing the National Development Camp 40 and seeing some of these all-star teams and teams that are Hlinka Cup and some of this stuff. I think there needs to be a deeper dive by USA Hockey if they really want to make this honest and pure, because I think there's still some really good players here in Massachusetts specifically. And, I want to make sure those players are on people's radars. And so, because I've been on the ground, I've seen, and say the best of the best. I've seen a lot of kids from the 07 birth year and the 09 birth year and being on the Eagles and playing at nationals or playing at tournaments throughout the year. Like the talent is very even. Yeah, there's a few 1%ers every year that are going to come from wherever. But outside of those 1%ers, the talent pool is very even. And I do think the one thing that does help Minnesota, and I don't know their exact model, but I think their price of entry to play hockey is a lot cheaper than the price of entry to play hockey in Massachusetts. So I think with that, you're better athletes. Everybody can afford to play ice hockey. And I think in Massachusetts, and it's not just Massachusetts, but maybe in the rest of the country, the point of entry is not $500. Like $500 barely gets you a skate laces at Pure Hockey these days, right? So like, I think the point of the cost of entry has affected the best athletes might not be choosing ice hockey in Massachusetts. They might be choosing another sport. I mean, and I know the other sports aren't cheap either. So it's not just, ice hockey's expensive and other sports are free. But, I do look at like the price of entry of, if LeBron James was growing up and hockey was in his backyard and it was affordable, like what would he look like on ice? And so I do think that has affected a little bit because I know due to their model in Minnesota, I feel like it's very town organized and the state probably subsidizes some of it. And like they keep a lot of kids in-house and everyone starts playing, which I think in theory is going to have your better athletes are going to keep rising based on their natural athletic ability in a lot of ways.
And then less geography specific, but more about kind of the rise of specialization happening earlier and year-round play and spring and summer tournaments and the credentialed hockey coming earlier and earlier with the Q and the Brick and these elite tournament teams and things like that. What has your philosophy been as a dad and as a coach as it relates to how to optimize? I was going to leave the question and say optimize development, but like I'm just scratch that last part. What has your philosophy been? Period. Or question mark.
I mean, I would say, having two boys come up through the system, neither of them did the Brick. They have my older guy played in the Pee Wee Quebec tournament because his team was in first place or second place in the EHF, so he had that opportunity. Carter, my younger guy, didn't have that opportunity because we ended up third, I think, that year versus in the top two after the first 10 games. So they've done a handful of tournaments. I would say a handful, meaning like 1 to 3 per spring, probably since they were 8 or 9. And a lot of that was like, hey, let's get your buddies together and put a Dream Big team into the Montreal Meltdown and go up with some really cool families and have a really good, fun experience. And I guess as a dad, I was hoping we were at 2-2 and we could leave on Sunday morning and get home at a normal hour versus making it to the finals on 3 o'clock and getting home more Monday morning. But no, for me, I think the big piece of the development is tournaments are fine if that's what you're into. I think, my guys specifically, and my philosophy is we play 3-on-3 in the springtime. We don't skate much. And then summertime, they'd be on the ice a couple days a week with me doing what I call now is position-specific training, but say like higher-end hockey development. And same way where there's a huge element of fun. Tournaments are fun if that's what you want to do, but make sure you're doing it because you want to have a good experience and not thinking that you're missing the boat on a development opportunity, or if you don't go to this tournament, then your kid's not going to be any good. Obviously, capitalism is great in a lot of ways, and going with the right mindset of like, I don't need to be at every event. It's not going to change the future of my son. And obviously, as long as he's got a passion for the game or she has a passion for the game and they're working hard and competing hard, and they will keep getting better organically.
So do your kids play other sports besides hockey?
Growing up, they did soccer for as long as they could in the fall before hockey got a little chaotic. And then up until I think 2 years ago, they played town and club baseball through the spring. Like I said, the springtime for us is, the gear more or less goes away. And they always, like I said, played baseball all spring long. And like I said, I usually would get ice on usually Sunday afternoons or evenings and run 3-on-3. And kids come, music's playing, and we change up every 45 to a minute shift length and have fun. And there's no coaches, there's no dads on the bench, no one's yelling, screaming. It's like, hey, just come and compete and have fun and put your gear away till next Sunday and play baseball through the week and get back at it.
Well, I hear some people and they say, like, look, like if your kid is special, like you'll know it, and no amount of you steering the ship is gonna make your kid special if you don't know it, right? And I don't mean special. Every kid is special, but like special in the game, right? And then there's other people, like some of the top player development coaches that I've talked to have told me off camera that it's almost like give me anything of clay and I can make them a star, right? And so you're a pretty confident player development person, but your kids also have good genetics. You've also seen a lot of kids come up in the game. What is your takeaway as it relates to nature versus nurture, and how much is innate to the kid versus imparted by parents, coaches, otherwise?
I do think there is a big piece of genetics tied to I'd say not just hockey, but athleticism is how I'd probably describe it. Like how fast a kid can run, how fast a kid can skate, how high can he jump, how big is he going to be, right? Like, unfortunately, size plays into this a little bit too. So I definitely think there's a large piece of it that becomes genetics in my eyes, not based on their hockey genetics, but based on their athleticism. And then from that, like, how motivated is the kid? Obviously, if you have a kid that's super athletic but highly unmotivated and he doesn't want to get better, like, those are tough kids to work with, right? I think for anyone to say if there was a kid that had minimal athleticism, but he had the best skill development coach in the world, like, there's just too many layers to trying to build that process out to really get that kid to the next level. Like, I say that, and I guess for me, it always goes back to some of my favorite clients or clients that are like, hey, like, he just wants to, like, he just wants to learn how to lift the puck. Like, he's just, like, the expectation, as long as, like, parents, I feel like, just have appropriate expectations. This would be how I would describe that, right? Like, I don't think the expectation should be like, my kid needs to be a Division I athlete, or my kid needs to play in the NHL. Like, I need to do all this to get him there. Like, the expectation in my eyes is the key. And it's like, hey, like, he wants to have a chance to play high school hockey. Like, he just wants to be on a team at the high school level to have fun and compete. And, like, let that grow, right? Is that JV hockey? Is that thirds hockey at maybe at prep school? Or is that varsity hockey in the ISL or NEPSAC, right? Like, let that kind of develop and grow. Like, I think when our expectations are unrealistic, like, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Like, I had no expectation of playing in the NHL. Did I want to play in the NHL as a little kid playing street hockey in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire? Of course. But, like, there wasn't this expectation of I had to get there. And my parents took me to Massachusetts because, like, they wanted me to become an NHL. They didn't even realize that was even possible probably back in the day, right? Like, and so I think that for me is some of the best clients, like I said, have been kids that, like, they're hungry for information. They can focus when they're on the ice. And they just want to get a little bit better. Like, there's no like, hey, I want to get to the NHL. How do I get there? Like, and I do think, like, there's a lot of genetic coding that goes into life. It's like certain kids get into Harvard, certain kids don't get into Harvard, right? Like, and a lot of that is the same way. So there's an academic piece that's genetic as well, right? So I don't know if I went on a little bit of a tangent in circles, but for me, I think there's definitely a genetic piece, and there's definitely a piece of, for the player to really want to get better, and whatever that better means, whatever that, like, level is for that person.
I just, in listening to you talk, one question came to mind that I don't think I've ever been able to ask so acutely as I'm about to. Not to overpromise, because then I'll underdeliver. It's not anything profound, but in my mind, goals and love are not necessarily the same thing, right? And so when you look at the kids that have gone the furthest that you've seen come up in the game, either in your playing days or now as a dad and coach, clearly the love needs to be there. What about goals, right? Like, is it this big overarching goal and you're working towards it every single day? Or is it just like love and hard work and take it as it comes? Like, are goals an important element in this, or where do they fit in, if at all?
I guess I'm not a huge goals person. I guess I wasn't raised that way. I never was in that mindset. I'm like 100% love and just like living in the moment. And I always reflect back on, obviously, with the '09 Eagles, the 3 kids have made the U.S. National program, my son Finn Sears and Sam Pandolfo. Like, those guys love the game. Like, we'll be on a Tuesday at Daly Arena in November, and they score a goal in a 2-on-2 small area game, and they're like celebrating and cheering and like loving it. I'm sure the goalie's parents didn't always love my approach to this, but like, for me, it was like, scoring goals should be fun. Competing your buddies should be fun. Like, that for me is like the end all. Like you score goals, like, enjoy it, celebrate it. Just as the goalie makes a huge save, like, he should enjoy that. If you're in the moment, like, you're a goalie, you got to make saves. But so I think for me, it's not about like that goal. I need to make it. I need to make the national program. It was more about, like, for me, and having my hands on, a lot of this '09 Eagles team coming up through. Like, it was like, let's enjoy this. Let's have fun. Let's compete hard. And a lot of our practices, that's what it was. It wasn't, hey, we're going to work on our forecheck. To truth be told, like, like, we barely ever talk forecheck. We don't talk systems. We talk about, like, competing hard, protecting pucks, using our bodies, like the want to score goals, the want to defend, like, doing a lot of the details. It wasn't about, like, what's our forecheck. Like, that's If you put the right guys together and they have enough fun and they compete hard enough, like that's what it was for us. And I think a lot of it is just the passion of the game. In the same way, like this, kids would celebrate in practice, like that. Like that's a good thing. Like that's not making fun of the goalie or teasing somebody. That's just like enjoying that moment. Just like if I was on a 2-on-1 in the NHL in practice and I knocked the puck off John Tavares' stick, like I'm probably gonna say something to him, like I got you. You're not good enough for this league. Like that's just enjoying that moment, which I think you really need as a kid, all the way up through. Like that passion and spirit is very contagious, and your teammates will love it. And before you know it, you got this collective engine that's really like working together.
Clearly, I think that cohesiveness and chemistry, like in building any team, even outside of sports, it takes time to develop and it's important and it's hard to come by once you get it gelling and working. Given that, as kids get older and puberty is not evenly distributed and girls come into the picture and other distractions come into the picture and things like that, how do you navigate that cohesiveness and developing with what you've got with having the best horses as the landscape continues to evolve under your feet? And I'm asking you that both as a club coach, but also as a prep coach. And I guess also as a dad that might be seeing your kids cap out on a given team or things like that. Like how do you navigate it from the different perspectives?
It's good. Yeah, I think it's a good question. Obviously, nowadays with phones and technology, and as they get older, and there's different vices, and I do try to, I guess, say to kids, like, when you come to the rink, you kind of change out of your street clothes and put on your hockey gear. Would be like, in my eyes, being like Wally the Green Monster at Fenway Park. No one knows who Wally is, right? Like he goes into Fenway Park under the cover of darkness, puts on his suit. The next thing you know, he's this mascot that's getting the fans involved, fired up at the next Red Sox game. And I do think for kids, like there's a lot of distractions out there. And obviously as a parent, I'm trying to, you're trying to keep your kid on the railroad tracks. They keep doing well. When they get to the rink, like that should be their time of like, I'm taking off my street clothes, I'm putting on my hockey gear. Like it's time to like go have fun and love this and put my phone away. And a lot of these kids aren't away from their phones that much anymore as they get to a certain age. Also at the rink, like the phone's in the locker room, I'm on the ice. Like I'm not even thinking about TikTok. I'm just like, locked in to have fun at the rink. I think that's like for me, even when I coach in high school hockey, like there's some dog days of January where you're like, oh man, this is practice 62 in January and we're exhausted. But I think it's like that element of like, same way you're out on the ice here, it's cold, but it's fun and it's competing and you're going up against your buddy that you have class with and he got better grade on you in a test and now you're on the ice with him and you're a defenseman, he's a forward and you're trying to shut him down. And once again, for me, it's all about like the love and the passion for the game. And I think that's even at the highest level when it becomes a job for guys and you're playing in the NHL, you're playing pro hockey somewhere, like you still got to have that passion because if you don't, it makes life really hard. And I'm sure that's with any job. If you work at Wall Street or you're working at a law firm or whatever it might be, like you got to love it. Or you're an emergency room doctor. Like, yeah, you're going to have some bad days and some off days, but hey, you put on your scrubs and you walk into the ER, like you're ready to do the best you can do and kill it that night or that day. So yeah, that's always been my approach.
So that's good on the distraction piece. So slightly different question, but as a coach, how do you navigate when to develop and when to recruit? And then as a kid or a family, how do you navigate when to stick it out or when to shop?
Yeah, it's a loaded gun. No, obviously everyone's situation is different in terms of like, hey, is this the right team for my son or my daughter, or is this not? Like I always value a couple of things, and the whole team club thing when you're going through it is like where do I live? Where's the team at? What's the location? Like how crazy am I about to get with this decision? Like, and who's coaching my kid? Like, all right, the team's not great, but I have Scotty Bowman or some crazy guy coaching my kids who's unbelievable. Like, what's that long-term track look like? I think you referenced my Eagles team. A lot of our kids, the core group, have been together for eight years or so. Like they've come all the way through, and obviously, I was the head coach, and Jay Pindoff was there as 99% of the time as well. So like these kids had this like good coaching structure that parents, I guess, trusted and respected, and most of the people stuck with it. So I think those are two things. Like where are you located? Where is the team located? Like to go from a team that's below 500 to a team that's slightly over 500, and you got to drive more, and the coach isn't as good. Like not a good decision in my eyes. So I think like as a parent, each situation is a little bit unique, but like the grass isn't always greener is what I guess is probably an easy way to say it. So in terms of that, and then, in terms of me working at a prep school, obviously Rivers is 6th through 12th grade, and it's a super competitive ISL school. And, I'm looking for 6th grader to 11th graders, to be honest with you. Like And once again, it's being a day school. Our window's a little bit tight around the greater Weston area. And same way, it's getting families interested in the school and then having conversations with them and trying to be honest with them of, where the team's at and hopefully where it's going and what does practice look like and is it competitive and do kids have a good experience? Like a lot of it for me is at a club team or at a skill session or at a high school practice, like I want kids to have fun, right? And obviously there's going to be kids, it happens every year. There's going to be kids, especially at the high school level, that aren't playing as much as they hope to, right? Like, unfortunately at high school hockey, the coach plays, in his eyes, who the best players are going to help them win that particular game, right? So those are always hard conversations. And I'm always like, I'd say my least part of being a coach is making those decisions because obviously we'd love to have everyone play, but life isn't always fair in that sense. And obviously you need to get better at X, Y, or Z so you give yourself a better chance. And, you never know if that door might open up for you. I've had kids that weren't playing much and all of a sudden they were a defenseman and someone got hurt up front and I asked them if they could play four and they took the ball and ran with it. And then they're playing every third shift. They're having a great experience, right? So I always think even at the youth level where, everybody should be playing pretty much fair across the board, maybe till late in the game, you never know. Somebody might get hurt. Somebody might quit. Somebody might move. Like, you got to be the guy, but you've been sulking on the sidelines, the past 3 months and you're not ready for that opportunity. So I hope that answers the double.
It does, yeah. And in a similar vein, it seems like the hockey path in terms of progressing in the game is only getting harder as it's more like I look at when I was coming up, I fell into playing Division III from a crappy public school, right? And like that, you don't fall into playing anything these days, right? Yeah. And then the entry age is getting older. You've got to go to juniors in between. The best kids might not even finish prep. Then you've got the Canadian major juniors, right? And then those kids are coming in and taking the D1 slots of the D1 kids that thought they were going to D1. So I guess as a dad of in a long-term minded family, I'll say, I was going to say academic, but it's not even academic. It's more like optimizing for a life path and loving the game, right? But optimizing for a life path, right? It sometimes feels like the hockey path and the life path can be at odds. So how do you know as a parent how to navigate that tension? Because we've talked about the long-term hockey development, but like, where does the life path fit in? And when do you have to hit the brakes on the hockey and maybe get some perspective on what really matters?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because I think every situation is unique, right? Like, and obviously,
and you're in a different spot too, because like,
yeah,
I mean,
living through it as a dad as well, right? Like,
and your kids are coming up like on a very competitive path.
Yeah, so it's I do think every situation is unique. I think you have to nowadays because the landscape's so fluid. I feel like it's probably like 6-month evaluations or 12 at the very least 12-month evaluations of, hey, my kid's a pretty good club hockey player. Like, do I send him to prep school? Like, yeah, that seems like a good fit. We went and watched a bunch of games. I think he can play at that level. And then he gets to the prep school and he's doing better than we expected. He's like trending and it's like, next thing you know, he gets drafted in the USHL and the Quebec Major Junior draft. And I think it's very fluid. I think obviously sports has played a huge part in my life. So as a dad, I don't say pushing sports down my kids' throats, but like I want sports to be part of their lives. I'm not that we're going to chase it to the moon and back, but make calculated decisions that involve sports that still can set them up for success in their day-to-day lives. I think that's really the key. And I think like I always would say to people ask me this question before, like you should really be dominating a level before you move on to the next level, right? So if you're playing prep hockey and you had a decent year, but you struggled a little bit, like you probably need another year of prep hockey. If you played prep hockey and you dominated in theory, like, yeah, now you're probably ready for that next step because each step up the ladder gets tighter and harder. And you want to be prepared for that. And obviously, if we have this conversation in 12 months with the world that we're living in, like it could be even different, right? Like it could be like, no, like we need to do this quicker. But like right now, I would say like, be comfortable where you might be at and focus on trying to control what you can control and how good you can play at that level. And then, all right, I'm ready for the next challenge. What is that? I'm at prep. Do I stay all the way through? Is that the right track? Or like I had a really good year. Like I need the next step because I need to be challenged more. And I think that's always how, in my eyes, like as a dad, like even at the youth level, like if I'm playing just town hockey in Newton, but I'm on the squirt ones and no one can even stop me. I'm like Wayne Gretzky. I've scored 500 goals in my squirt year. Like, you probably need to find that club team that's going to challenge you more. And then if I'm on a lower level club team, I'm really killing it. Like, all right, let's take that next step up the ladder versus like trying to get to the top of the ladder, but you really should be down a peg or two and swimming in the deep end and you don't touch the puck. It's not fun and you get frustrated and the game, you've lost some of that balance and why that sport should be important in your life.
It is a tougher road to play in college today. I guess one clarifying question is, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that there are changes that should be made to increase the supply to better meet the demand? Like, should everyone be able to play in college, or is the fact that it's getting scarcer and harder a positive because it makes it more special?
I do feel like I'm hopeful at some point some of these SEC schools and some of these other larger schools will get Division I ice hockey. Like, I think, there's a lot of good players that don't get that opportunity. And then there's a lot of good players that should have Division III opportunities that don't get that opportunity, right? Because this supply and there's only so many seats available at the table. And, I think that's always the tough part for me when I was doing Tier 3 juniors or doing coaching at Rivers and you have kids that want to play college hockey. Like, it's really hard. I don't want to say it's impossible, which is not impossible, but it's really hard. And there's a lot of really good players. And there's kids from Massachusetts to Minnesota to Arizona to Texas. They're coming from everywhere. I hopefully NCAA wise, Division I wise, for sure, some more teams open up, especially with bringing in kids that obviously grew up in Canada or play major junior. Obviously, you're bringing in, I don't know how many kids will come down a year, but obviously that's going to open up more kids coming across and taking potential seats at the table. So, but once again, it's obviously no goal is easy to achieve. And I think kids, in terms of if they want to play college hockey, that's great. Like, all right, like let's work towards that. And then, keep evaluating each year on how that looks, what you might need to do. Or maybe at some point, as you're saying, maybe it's, hey, we got to focus on life. Like, you need to go to school because you're going to come out and do X, Y, or Z versus just focus on hockey.
I've heard some people say that with the changes, the game, that some of the implications in prep could be that the best players don't finish in prep, and also that maybe reclassing starts becoming, I was going to say less mandatory, but I'll just say less important for hockey kids. Do you agree with that, or do you have a different take?
In terms of kids graduating from prep?
Do you think reclassing will be as prevalent in the coming years as it is now? And do you also see the trend that maybe there'll be more kids leaving prep earlier for juniors and not finishing out?
Both of my boys reclass. Yeah. I do see a lot of power. I do see a lot of power in the reclass, to be honest with you. I do think it allows you to get bigger, faster, stronger. Obviously, with anything, like maybe certain kids are ahead of the maturity piece or the development piece, so they're already bigger, faster, and stronger than their current age group. Obviously, I don't ever tell them they have to reclass. Like, I think it's a very family choice. But I've seen it with my own kids with a reclass and have had success with it. And I think, I don't know what the percentage is, we'll say in the ISL or in prep hockey, but I do think lots of kids have been through that reclass of some level at some grade. But same notion, I think every family is a little bit different. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. Like, I think if you're going to a prep school, in my eyes, like as a 9th grader and a 10th grader, you want to have success. You want to play. You want to be part of it. And sometimes that reclass gives you that chance to have success as a 9th or a 10th grader versus, oh my God, you wake up at the end of your sophomore year and you haven't done much. You haven't played much. And now you're a junior and you just feel like you're swimming in the deep end where you're like, I wanted to play college hockey. And I'm just finally getting in the lineup. Like, what am I doing here? So I think that's where it gets a little tricky for some families if they get through the process too quickly, versus maybe reclassing and getting an extra year and giving little Johnny a little extra time to get up to speed.
Do we have time for a couple other quick topics? How you doing?
Just a minute or two left before I got to scoot it back upstairs.
Okay. So you told me before we recorded that you thought video was the next wave in development. Why do you think that? And how do you see, what's your wish for how video will be utilized in the future?
I think kids nowadays are very, obviously, tech savvy. Everyone's on their phone, iPads, TVs, whatever it might be. So I think it's a good way, even at school, they're very iPad centric. So I think it's how kids are seeing life and understanding life in a way. And I do think with hockey being a very fast reaction-based game, kids need to see mistakes and or positive pluses or minuses on video multiple times where they can start hopefully quantifying and tying some of those wires together in their brain to help them take that next step in their development. And Obviously, there's at the highest levels or even at the high school level, we do a lot of individual work, teamwork, and we do a lot of individual work as well. If kids want to come in and watch their shifts, and I think when you get in the habit of reviewing their shifts and trying to watch it a little bit more as a coach than a super fan, where you can start seeing trends and patterns and identify them, and same way try to put them into use the next practice, the next game. I always get excited as a coach if you've been working with a kid and you're asking to do a few things and it finally like clicks in, and the next time you see him, like he's all amped up that he's had success doing what we've been talking about, or next thing led to a goal or maybe a block shot, whatever it was. You're starting to tie those patterns together, and because it is hard as a player, I feel like when you're on the ice and you're buzzing around in a game and you get back to the bench, I don't say you black out when you're on the ice, but you get back to the bench and the coach is like, hey, like, remember early in the shift when you were on the wall and you didn't get the puck out, and the kid's looking at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like last shift, like when did that happen? It's really a good tool to go back, especially as a coach on a team, to go back and show that kid maybe those clips. Obviously, it can't be too negative because he's going to tune you out. So it's finding that balance. And I do think like as kids get older and in high school or college or pro, like in having like a third party professional, if you want to call it, that can help with that form of development as well, where it's like, hey, I listen to your coach. I'm not telling you anything structurally. Let's look you're a winger. Like let's look at your wall touches. Like how are you taking the puck off the wall? Like did you shoulder check? Why did you not use the middle of the ice? Like why didn't you get your feet moving in this situation? I think where that kid can, I don't say feel it because it's on video, but like feel it, see it, touch it, and really help them like tie the wires together in their brain, so it hopefully helps further their development.
Awesome. Well, we covered so many wide-ranging topics, Freddie. Thanks so much. Is there anything I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any parting words for listeners?
No, I thought it was great. I think it's the same way. The only thing I would say to anyone that's listening is make this enjoyable for your kids. Going to the rink should be fun. Putting their gear on should be fun. Competing with their friends should be fun. Obviously they should be working hard and competing hard. But at the end of the day, like, good game, bad game. Limit the car ride exposure on the way home. Let coaches hopefully handle some of that. But at the end of the day, like, let's have them enjoy it, right? Like, make them want to get up in the morning, go to the rink, or in the afternoon or evening, and just overall enjoy the experience and let them maximize what they're able to do with who they are as an individual.
Well, great point to end on and great discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, and best of luck to you and to your family as well.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for tuning in to the Next. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and you haven't already, you can subscribe from your favorite podcast player, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or any of the others. We also send a newsletter every week on the journey itself, the new content that we publish, the questions that we're wrestling with, how the platform itself is coming along that we're planning to build for player development, and where we could use some help. And you can find that at thenextnext.substack.com. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.